For today's video, we're finally going to be taking a look at Gouging Fire. This is an archetype that one of my friends, Luke, came up with and has now managed to get over 600 championship points with Gouging Fire at the local level, as well as having some great performances in the European regionals, with his best performance being in top 16 with Gouging Fire. Gouging Fire is obviously the centerpiece of this archetype. We're playing 4 copies of Professor Sada, just like you'd see in a Raging Bolt deck or a Roaring Moon deck. This time we're powering up with Fire Energy, and we also have Magma Basin on top of that. So even though Blaze Blitz is an expensive attack, we have a lot of means of accelerating in this list. And Gouging Fire is a weird card because, like, the 60 damage feels just a little bit shy of where you want to be, and the 260 also feels a little bit shy of where you want to be. And that's why Luke's list is really creative, actually, because it has a few ways of making that math work out for you. First of all, there's the additional ancient Pokemon of Flutter Mane, which has that Hex Hurl attack that can deal 90 and place 2 counters on opponent's bench Pokemon in any way you like. This is a really good card in the deck for a number of reasons. Just having more ancient Pokemon to attach energy to with Sada is always handy. But this is, of course, a single prize attacking threat that can come in. It's very good against Lost Zone box. If you think Lost Zone Pikachu is going to be picking up in play, having this Flutter Mane is a huge nuisance for them. And at the same time, into V-Star matchups and even into these Stage 2 matchups, having a Flutter Mane that can mop up after a Gouging Fire is really powerful. And at the same time, you're setting those counters up for things like Pidgeot EX on the bench, or other V-Stars as well. So that 2 counter placement is actually a really big deal. And the other thing we have going for us is the Munkidori synergy in the deck as well here. Because we have so much energy sloshing around our board from the Sada and from the Magma Basin, there are times where you can get a manual attachment in on Munkidori in the best case scenario, but in other situations you can also Sada Darkness energies and then energy switch them onto Munkidori. That's one of the key plays within this deck list. Because Adrenabrain has such great synergy with Magma Basin when naturally damaging our fire dudes, the Adrenabrain is going to allow us to push Gouging Fire back up to that tanky 230 hit point threshold, which is annoying for a number of decks, whilst at the same time allowing us to push our own damage outputs often into that 280 threshold, which is the ideal situation for Gouging Fire. But also you can set up, like lower hit point bench sitting Pokemon as well for mid-turn prizes. And actually, one of the hidden strengths of this Gouging Fire deck is not taking KOs on certain turns to play around Fezandipiti EX from the opponent. So there are going to be those situations where you just judge and swing in with Gouging Fire and know that they're actually going to be sat on a low hand in the mid-game, and that you can swing a board state with a Munkidori turn on the following turn into your next attack to take 4 prize swings. And similar to dodging Fezandipiti EX, you also dodge the Legacy energy in Lugia if it's on a V-Star exactly, which is another really cool interaction this deck has access to. The other main sort of star of the show is the Delphox V. Again, it's another reason why we have Energy Switch in the deck list, because this is like a harder Pokemon to get powered up. You need to utilize E-Switch as well as Basin to get it going in one turn. But that magical fire attack is very, very powerful. A 120-120 is amazing into all sorts of engine Pokemon and evolving Pokemon, but also, of course, Delphox is a fire type, so you can be cleanly knocking out Teal Mask Ogerpon at the same time, and that's a really big deal into the Raging Bolt matchup as well as the Regidrago matchup. Again, coming back to those situations where Entei is not getting a clean KO or Gouging Fire is not getting a clean KO onto a Drago, you know that you can sort of repair that situation with a Delphox Gusting play, knowing that Magical Fire can finish off the Drago that you damaged, as well as cleanly KOing a Ogerpon. And as we know, Manaphy is like in and out of deck lists right now because of Dusknoir shenanigans anyway, and because of cancelling Cologne in decks. Manaphy is like not guaranteed, even in evolving decks, and that really allows Delphox to run riot on certain board states. The list in front of you is like a slightly stripped back shell from Luke's most recent list, where he was utilizing a Kieran as an additional supporter to give you even more damage modification, and also had like an Iron Bundle in the 60, which is like a fairly logical card in theory, but this deck list plays really tight on bench space already, and your ball search in the opening stages is very often wanting to be multiple ancient Pokemon, a V Pokemon so you can have access to your Forest Seal Stone, you want to get your engine Pokemon in the mix. There's just much more higher priority targets to search, that it's very difficult for you to have a very specific hand to actually want to weave in that Iron Bundle anyway. So instead I've just gone for like the extra ball search card and the extra trekking shoe and said I just want to be on the board as much as possible with this archetype because we are combo based at the end of the day. Another note about these sort of engine Pokemon in the deck, the Fezandipiti and the Mew EX, what I found about this archetype is they are so strong in this deck list because Gouging Fire doesn't lose its energy. It's sat there, it's used its big Blaze Blitz, it's got 3 energy committed to it. Your opponent pretty much has to deal with that card. If they're gusting your Fez or your Mew, they're resetting Gouging Fire for you, which allows you to just sort of stay on your onslaught. So they're really, really incentivized to just go for like a hand disruption plus KO the active play into this matchup all the time. And that means you get to stick with some of the most powerful EXs in the deck. Mew EX being the pivot for you, as well as drawing additional cards, and Flip the Scripts continuing to draw through the deck, helping you chain those bosses orders, chain those Sada's Vitalities, and really stick in the race. And that's one of the key things that I find very different playing this archetype, comparing it to like a Roaring Moon or a Raging Bolt. Bolt, of course, removes all its energy, so your opponent's always going to go for an engine Pokemon given the opportunity. And a Roaring Moon, you know, they could be far less threatening post using their Frenzied Gouging because they can't do it twice or they're self-KOing. So your opponent has a lot of incentives in those decks to target the other stuff. Whereas in this archetype, it feels like Fez and Mew sit on the bench basically all game once you put them into play, which is a really big boon for the list. Also, big shout out to the quad jet energy in the deck. I think it's one of the smartest things Luke has done, is that you have just such a great time into the controlling matchups thanks to this introduction. You naturally need to reset your Blaze Blitz anyway, and you have some chunky retreaters like Entei V in the list, so you naturally want to have a decent amount of switching cards, and they just inherently help this archetype because you want to be basoning to the bench, right? So you always want your fire guys sat in the back so you can jet them into the active very easily. So it has natural synergy within the deck list, but it also means matchup-wise against the Snorlax players, against the Mimikyus and the Ogerpons, that sort of thing, you can just absolutely run rampant in those situations. Putting it in the sort of same category as a Lugia, where without changing the deck list inherently, you're just walking into those matchups feeling very, very confident, which is one of the main things that you can't say about the Miraidons and the Raging Bolts of the world. They naturally feel a little bit unfavored into the controlling matchups. Here, I think you just sort of breeze through them. So that is Gouging Fire. It's a bit more of a toolbox of attackers, even though it's just like one Entei, one Delphox. But because you're constantly drawing cards with like Sada, Greninja, Trekking Shoe, that sort of thing, and you're trying to keep your lines open with E-Switch, with Basin, with trying to weave in Munkidori when you can, it's a really weird deck to pilot because you're constantly thinking about the best case scenario and keeping those doors open, whilst also giving yourself the best odds for just like having a decent turn and staying in the game. So like intuitively, it's not the easiest deck to get on with, especially for an aggressive archetype, sort of in air quotes. But I do think there's a lot of power to this deck, and I think it's been shown that even though there's been only a handful of pilots taking this 2 tournaments, it's had enough consistent deep runs now that it's definitely a real deck. Towards the end of the video, I'll talk about a few different changes that I've thought about with the 60, but for now, let's get into some games. If you're looking for PTCG live codes, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your order using that code, OmniPoke. So here we are getting into our first game. Our opponent's going to be going first. Looks like we have a Mulligan here with a huge chunk of our energy in this opening hand. And now we have a pretty nice workable hand. We have energy that we can discard easily with Greninja. We have some extra push with Trekking Shoe and that Ultra Ball in there as well. So we should be able to find an ancient Pokemon to start Sardering onto, which is always nice. Looks like we're going to have a pretty decent turn 1. Definitely going second, you want to have things like Sada in that opener so you can pressurize the really powerful attacks. And looks like we're up against Regidrago. You have to imagine they got clever from their Mulligan draw, as we are going to see the Teal Dance into the Vessel discarding their first dragon, the Giratina V-Star. They're attaching Active, which is a little bit risky unless they have Switch in hand. Going to see another Teal Dance. And just a pass to us. Wow, okay, that gives us a lot of reason to want to take the first 2 prize knockout here. Not that you wouldn't look to do it anyway, and the Secret Box is always a good pickup for us. And actually just got a lot better because the second shoe gets us into Entei V, and that gives us a really nice tool choice of Forest Seal Stone, so we have access to all sorts here now. We can Nest Ball out the Gouging Fire, we have the Basin as well, so this is working out really smoothly. Let's have a look. We should be soldering the dark, because then we can basin the fire, and that's going to work out pretty nicely. I'm just going to think twice about this Vessel if I want it to be Nest or Ultra Ball, or possibly the Bravery Charm could go here as well. It's close between the lot, to be fair, because you do want to just keep having access to more ancient Pokemon, obviously. But we are going to get Gouging ready. That means we can protect the Forest Seal Stone. The Bravery Charm on the Mew is fine, just so that we can draw additional cards here if we are going to go Gouging proactively. I think because we have the Sada in hand, I like the second Ancient Mon being put onto the board. And we'll come in, and most importantly, we get the early 260, which is a huge boast of this archetype. Just like the Roaring Moons or the Miraidons or the Raging Bolts, we have that turn 1 pressure. There's a bit of a combo, but it's definitely in our range. Sada can sometimes get 2 energy on, and then the E-Switch is alive. You don't always have to have the Basin to make it happen. Let's see how the opponent responds. They're starting off with some Teal Dances, then they have V-Star. And they're immediately going to flip their V-Star marker to try and get some stuff in the discard pile. I think they do need to access some of their Energy Switch here. And that's what we're seeing straight away. It is going to be the double E-switch. And bringing in the Drago, and then it's going to be copying Giratina here. And Lost Zoning to Grass. A little ambitious to keep one on the active, because we can hit 280 with the Adrenabrain Munkidori shenanigan math. I'm going to start off with Fleet-footed because I already have Switch Cart in hand. I think the debate here is whether or not to draw any cards pre-Sada here. Or like if the Ultra Ball can get me low enough to restart with Mew. You can see I was definitely hovering over that V-Star power. But chose to draw 2 with Greninja first. It worked out pretty nicely because I got into Vessel, which is definitely solid. Then we can Basin Fire. And you can see I'm just going through the motions here of whether or not I want to get an extra ancient Pokemon on here, so I can start not only fire but also a dark to this Flutter Mane. And if I can do that extra attachment, I can use the E-switch in hand with Munkidori is the idea. And I already have Forest Seal Stone, but the Trekking Shoe actually gets me into the Nest Ball. So now Munkidori's live with the E-switch for the Adrenabrain that is going to help me get to that 280 this turn to respond on this V-Star. And we can even hold the Switch Cart, and it means I haven't spent Forest Seal Stone either. So we're going down to 2 prize cards with Mew EX and a Forest Seal Stone on Entei, and the opponent basically has to go for the Gouging Fire because it's just way too threatening otherwise, right? So the best they can do here is like INO Jamming Tower, maybe, is their best line. Plus get a K on the active. Let's have a look. They're going to Research, so no INO. That means I'm holding on to Boss. So they certainly do have to replace Stadium here, right? Because Basin attach on our Entei is game. Even then, I still feel like Jamming Tower is the most important thing they can find here, but they end up Grasping, and that's just not going to be anywhere near enough. So we can reset that Gouging Fire and just gust up an Ogerpon for a pretty clean 3-turn sweep on the Drago, which is definitely possible with the archetype. Sometimes it's Munkidori math, sometimes it's Delphox getting in for 4 prizes against Drago, where you like punch it for not enough, either with Entei or with Gouging, and then you can gust up an Ogerpon and take a 4-prize swing with Magical Fire. But either way, we're getting into the next game here, and it looks like it's a Pidgeot control. And honestly, this is one of the biggest strengths of Gouging Fire. You pretty much laugh in the face of this archetype, because Gouging Fire itself can easily get over the Ogerpon, as well as the fact that we have Flutter Mane in the deck, as well as Mew EX, that are both decent attackers, at least, into Mimikyu. And we are playing 1 Switch Cart plus 4 Jet Energy, plus the 3 Boss's Orders. We have many means of getting around trapping Pokemon or anything like that. So I think the Snorlax matchup is as good as it can be. I think it's even better than Lugia because you play 4 stadiums. So even if they try and have stadium removal, you're always going to have enough fuel to get over the line. And again, we have like high damage output options. We have even Flutter Mane Sprinkle math can do all sorts for us. So I think against control, we're always like really, really in the driver's seat. We're going to use Motivate to power up this Gouging Fire fully. We know that we're against control, so we can take things a little bit slower here, as the opponent is going to INO, putting us into a new hand, and they're going to Fang Snipe here and hope for the best. But we already have Gouging Fire ready to rumble, so it's an easy retreat, and that'll be the first 2 prizes on our quest. They're going to get rid of Nest Ball there, I think it was. Really not a big deal, though. I don't see much reason to play much out of the hand either, to be honest. We are going to Ultra Ball away Delphox and just grab Mew. Start powering this up as a potential option for this Mimikyu, I suppose, is the idea here, before just hard retreating into Gouging. The reason why I'm manually attaching to the Mew is that I can always Sada to the Flutter anyway. So keep the options open for both, really. As Mimikyu is going to come in now. Going to see Bravery Charm into the instant charge. Not doing too much, just kind of hoping that the Mimikyu's a headache for us, but we would not be able to Blaze Blitz anyway this turn. As we get into Forest Hill Stone, actually, I think we're digging mostly for Energy Switch. If I want to get an attack in with Flutter here. So I think it will be use of Forest, more than likely. Yeah, we're just going to keep the pressure on. The Bravery Charm on the Pidgey actually means that I can't just bring that up and Heat Blast it. I'm going to preserve my Jet Energies just in case any shenanigans are afoot, and I'm just going to utilize the Basin here to top back up on Gouging Fire. And we can Hex Hurl. I really like the 2 counters going onto this Pidgey, because then it opens up Blaze Blitz to finish off with Gouging later. So, looking pretty solid for us here. Again, like, I'm really not under much pressure. I think the only thing that can be like a swing to keep in mind is that, like, if you only have one real attacker powered up on the board, that there is Blood Moon Ursaluna, which can be dangerous, and it has, like, you know, really high hit points with their tool buffs and whatnot. I think that's the only thing to bear in mind. But this deck has so much bounce back anyway that Gouging Fire can so easily be, like, built and built again. So they're going to try their best to try and counter-catch a trap, but we have plenty of Jet Energy, so that's not going to be a huge issue. We are going to Basin onto Gouging. I'm probably just going to jet the Mew and retreat. Nope, we're just going to take out the Pidgeot. Yeah, still jetting the Mew here to get the extra attachment ready. So I have multiple means around Mimi, and I'm also just taking away the engine and going down to 1. And now Mimikyu is not even a good wall because I have guys powered up on the bench. Like, this is just a bit of a breeze, to be honest with you. It's a waiting game for us to try and find boss's orders again here. Can start drawing with these Trekking Shoes to try and get closer to it, because it's game on the spot. No, but we do hit Judge, which isn't too shabby. We're going to play the Switch Cart so that I can pressurize this Mimikyu at least alongside the Judge, so they have to have Penny and a few other decent Pokemon to go like alongside it for it to actually be a headache for us. And because I suppose if they have Penny there picking up Hero's Cape, I'm going to throw 2 counters onto the Rotom as well. They do have Nest Ball. They have another Mimikyu. And they do actually have Penny, so this is pretty much the best answer they can do. All it is doing is buying them a turn of Instant Charge, but it's pretty much the best answer they have. We're still digging towards boss, but not so far that we want to waste our Jet Energies. I think the only way we lose is some random backdoor win condition from them at this point, so we'll just keep ticking away and force them to keep having more Penny, as we are really just slowly working towards boss, I think. It may be that I've gone through 2, actually. I haven't actually checked the discard pile. Otherwise, I'd be secret boxing, right? Yeah, I must just not have boss left, but we're just slow poking through. Looks like they're going Chi-Yu, which isn't going to win them the game anytime soon. Yeah, we can just retreat and take the KO. So, looks like they were just out of options there. And yeah, Control is one of your bread and butter matchups as Gouging. That is one of the selling points, that this has a very, very solid time into that matchup compared to something like Raging Bolt, actually, where it's like a much more tough prospect. Let's get our 3rd game in. And again, the hand isn't looking too bad. We have access to some Fire Energy, but we don't have access to an Ancient Pokemon just yet. So I might have to Judge here, and that would be a little bit rough. Looks like we're up against Miraidon. They're going to nest out a Squawk, and they're also going to start using the unit. Magnemite comes down. Pikachu opens up their bench so they can get Hans Raikou. Straight into generator number 1. And that does hit 1 onto a Raikou. They're also going to swing an energy there, and they're going to Squawk a couple Lightning. Pretty good opener, to be honest. That also sets up their Magneton for a future turn. Ooh, Top Decker Gouging's actually brilliant for us. I'm going to get rid of Judge and keep Delphox around for the potential of Forest Stone turn 1, because we don't have much outside of this Sada draw, to be honest with you. So we're going to start with 3 cards, and that does get us into Ultra Ball at the very least, and we can start filtering even more energy out of the deck if we really want to. And now I can look to Squawk here. Actually, we're going to go Greninja by the looks of things. Oh, 2nd Gouging. That doesn't seem that great. I guess I already have Basin plus attachment, so I don't actually need much this turn. But it means I don't have much dig. I suppose I'm valuing the bounce back of Sada next turn quite high here. Maybe too high, to be honest with you, looking back. But at the very least, we are taking a 2-prize KO. And honestly, going Gouging into Gouging next turn is pretty good. We're taking the first 2. We're expecting a Raikou bounce back, but I'm already holding on to Sada with Basin on board, so I really don't need much next turn to just keep this pressure up. Yeah, maybe just this was the safer line, just to hold a Sada for next turn. We are going to see the Arven from them, then into a Secret Box. So it means they will at least be bouncing the Basin, which causes us a bit of a headache. And I imagine they're also going to try and Bravery Charm something here. Bravery Charm on Raikou doesn't do anything, but it does on some of their other dudes, like the Miraidon itself. There's Blood Moon, there's Zap, they're tandeming another Raikou out. Then they're going to Bravery Charm. I don't see why they Bravery Charm the bench, the active Raikou here. It doesn't change what they're getting knocked out by. We are going to see the Forest Hill Stone, though, and they're going to Super Rod. Back some Lightning before a good old Generator, giving themselves better odds. Oh, maybe the reason why I didn't want to Squawk was so that I didn't give him the Amp for 3 option at some point. Sorry, just thinking back to that turn where I didn't choose Squawk. Anyway, it's going to be the KO with the Rondo. They are going to level up the trade. We have at least 3 draws here. Ooh, Nest Ball's actually a good pickup. That gives us Fez. That means 6 draws to try and find a Basin or a Forest Hill Stone or Secret Box or E-Switch. Lots of outs. Lots of outs here to keep the attacking pressure going. We still have most of our shoes, I think. Okay, 3 not great cards from the Sada. And 3 terrible cards from the Fez. I was feeling pretty good about this, to be honest with you. I was feeling pretty good about our situation, but a lot less so now. And actually, we're just going to end up conceding there. That is a bit of an issue with the racing matchups. If you can't keep that pace, it is going to be an issue. And one thing about gouging is you are a little bit more combo-based than the others. And even though we're in a good spot there, with good odds, sometimes you do just whiff. And like, what's the best thing I can do there? I can go Flutter and pass, but I think we're just toast there, to be honest with you. More times than not, because they even have hands for Flutter, so it's not like we force them to have Boss either. Let's get to our final game. Looks like it's up against Ceruldege. Again, the hand, not amazing, but it has some reach with the shoes and the concealed cards. That is one of the things about this deck. You're constantly juggling pieces, and knowing the right order and what to chase is one of the biggest skills of the archetype, because it is so flexible that it's not always the easiest to map out your opening turns. We are going to see the Squawk. Oh, got rid of 2 Ceruldege and 2 Night Stretcher already. But in the name of discarding energy, that's kind of what you have to do with this deck sometimes. We are going to see the concealed cards into the Charcadet number 3. So they are safe against any Delphox shenanigans in our ultimate high roll situation. And they're not going to Squawk. Maybe they... Oh, nice. We had the Sada pickup. Not Squawking means they're probably just holding on to more Ceruldege pieces, you would imagine. We're going to spin the stop. We end up losing our Mew EX, which is a bit of a shame. Also lost a Gouging, I think. Yeah. We are going to Nest Ball here. And we're going to grab Delphox V, because that's still one of our more threatening attacking options if it can come together. But not much from that, to be honest with you. We're just going to end up attaching and passing. We didn't get enough energy in our discard pile there with the Pokestop whiff. So we're just going to have to hold out for now and hope that it's still tough for them to get enough energy in the discard pile to also Gust. Although the Pokestop does help out a little bit there. That also gets them Night Stretcher. 6 energy in the discard pile for them right now. So they're at 150 damage, now going to 190. Stretcher gets back another Ceruldege for them, so they have re-established those dudes. Also going to attach to the bench, and they're just going to swing and take the single prize KO. That's pretty good for us. That does get us right back in the mix so that we can win in 3 attacks and win a race against them. The one thing to bear in mind is that they do still have Briar to contend with, so that's something we are going to consider, as I'm going to fire off a Judge here. And Nest Ball is pretty solid. We also have the Forest Hill Stone for the Delphox on the bench. Let's see the first 3 cards from Fez. That finally gives us fire energy that we can get rolling with Basin here. And I'm just going to take Munkidori And we're going to swing the fire onto Gouging on the bench. And I'm pretty sure that we're not going to get hand disrupted, so I'm just going to hold Forest for now, not give him a reason to chase Delphox, because it could still be a decent attacker here as well, if I need it to be. Let's see what they're up to. They have to get through a Bravery Charm Gouging, so they still need to discard some more energy themselves here. They were at 190 this last turn, now they're at 230, I think. After the Concealed Cards and the Vessel. They're going to PAL pad back in some supporters. Iono and Carmine. Then they get Trekking, gets rid of Nest Ball. And they're going to Ultra Ball out just another Ceruldege, probably. No, it's going to be Fez, even though I haven't taken a KO. Can they reach at this point? I don't think they have enough energy. Attach Retreating does help them get there, though. That gets them to 310. Yeah, so nice. Clutch choice there. But the good news for us is, actually, that now, if we can get Munkidori in the mix here, we can take out both Ceruldege and go down to 2. Oh, no, we can't. We can't. We can only deal with 1 this turn, but we're opening up Monkey Math for the following turn. Oh, the Basin is not bad, actually, off the top. Then the Fez gets us an interesting 3 cards as well here. We're probably going to Vessel away Vessel or Basin here, yeah. Get some more energy out. We did get rid of our final Gouging Fire with our very early Pokestop, so I might have to Forest to find the Flutter Mane here, just for an extra Ancient target, so that I can weave in this Munkidori. The cool thing that this does, though, is that it plays around Briar actually really well, in that this turn I can take 2, set up 2, and then next turn, if Munkidori sticks around, I can take my final 4. We're going to spin. Let's get a couple items this time. Shoe. We did just get rid of a boss, so I'm going to keep 1. And we did miss out on finding any jet energy, which would have been kind of cool, but we can at least start Adrenabraining here. We're going to take off the bench, keep the Ceruldege active, because we want the 2 prizes in the active. Trekking Shoe, we can get rid of Basin, we're holding 1. And I guess it just means we're attached retreating after all this. Entei is going to come down. We're going to attach Dark and retreat. So the worry here is if they Gust Monkey, I suppose. That's a bit troubling. But then I maybe have a backdoor means into Hex Hurl, taking out Charcadet and Ceruledge. No, that's not going to be live because I don't have Gust as well. Let's see if they can work towards Boss here. I know some were discarded earlier. They're just going to shuffle 1 back in. The Briar obviously not live because of how we've done this. They're going to Carmine, though. So we've dodged Boss, and I think that gives us a clear runway, actually, to close the game here. I can use Munkidori to finish off the Ceruledge in the active, and I'm holding on to Entei and Boss, which could be my Basin, attach, Boss, the Squawk. Should be enough here with Rondo. As they're going down to 1 card in deck, as you'd expect from Ceruledge. They're going to Basin to the bench. Doesn't make a huge amount of difference here. Yeah, so nice. We've been able to dodge both Briar here and dodged Boss. Just by them not having it in the hand, which means I can go Entei. I've also got E-Switch, right? So I can Basin to the Delphox here. E-Switch to the Entei after a quick Adrenabrain. And we should be at 160 exactly. So, happy days. Closing things out on Ceruledge there. One kind of bricky game, and there have been situations with the deck where we're keeping our lines open and drawing cards first and then seeing what happens from the next 3, then the Shoe, then the Greninja. So you're in a bit of a state of what's the best turn possible and then juggling with what's actually likely to happen, which is a bit of a strange tug of war that you have with yourself with this deck, because there are a few different attacking lines that are available. There's Munkidori, and like committing an energy attachment means then you're like losing outs with Jet at times, or losing outs of E-Switch. So there is a bit to manage with the archetype, but I do think at its core, Gouging Fire does enough damage in the format, especially with the help of Munkidori and Delphox, that can be like a nice mopper-up style attacker as well, and Flutter Mane to an extent as well can set up those V-stars and whatnot. But I do think you can get very cheeky with the list, and I don't think it's as inconsistent as I initially thought. Still less consistent than Raging Bolt, definitely. But with the quad shoe, with maximizing ball search and vessel and whatnot, you're still giving yourself a really decent shot at getting into most games. So yeah, that's Gouging Fire. Let's talk about some other options. As for other options, there really aren't that many that I'm thinking of too much right now. Because we play so many one-off Pokemon, you could definitely think about either bumping up counts of the ones you think are more important, or having that Hisuian Heavy Ball in the list. Heavy Ball's weird because it's still just a card you have to find in a dump and draw deck, but you do have Forest Hill Stone and you do have Secret Box, so you can cherry pick it out if you really feel like that one Pokemon will completely change the matchup. And in a similar vein, Night Stretch is a really interesting one, because even though this deck doesn't play Pokestop, because you have so many item cards, and you also want to get so many energy in the discard pile, I find myself spinning my opponent's stop very, very frequently. So giving myself that Night Stretcher gives me less heart palpitations when I mill a Pokemon that I might have wanted during the game as well. So that's another card that I would think about having, probably just a one-of in the deck list, to also just help smooth things out a little bit. If you're benching Pokemon proactively and it's taken out by the opponent, you can feel like you've lost that resource for good if it's one of your one-of Pokemon. Whereas with that Night Stretcher, you have a bit more license to threaten attackers, knowing they can be dealt with, and you can bring them back and still get value out of them. And then finally, there's always the question of Secret Box. Like, is it actually better than Prime Catcher? You could go box out, boss out, possibly even the one Switch Cart could go at that stage as well. Or you could like cut one Bravery Charm, go to second Switch Cart, then have Prime Catcher. Then you could like juggle the Jet Energy to another Fire Energy and do some other gymnastics in the list. That ends up with you having a really nice item gusting effect that allows you to combine it with Sada, and essentially just allows you to Gouging Fire chain much more reasonably. Whilst in those like endgame situations, sure, you have Fez, you have Mew, and in this deck, because Gouging Fire is so threatening, the opponent oftentimes takes out your attacker rather than your engine Pokemon, so Mew and Fez actually stick on the board quite often, but it's still no guarantee that you're going to find that boss, especially because you're also trying to piece together like base and attach on top of that very often. So Prime is something that I'm still definitely thinking about. Like, if you can squeeze in space for Pokegears in addition to Prime, that's where it can start feeling pretty good. Overall, though, I do think this is like an underplayed archetype. We've seen enough success from it, even though it's been an underplayed archetype, that definitely is something here. And at the very least, if you're someone who likes playing the decks like Raging Bolt or Miraidon, but fear the controlling matchups, this could be your backup deck that you start to learn, because this is the archetype that definitely respects those controlling matchups, just by virtue of having 4 Stadium, 4 Jet, in addition to the Switch Cart and Boss, and by having enough attacking threats to get through an army of Mimikyu or Ogerpon, that sort of stuff. So definitely a cool deck, a little bit trickier to play than some of the other aggro archetypes, but that's by no means a bad thing. That little bit of extra flexibility allows you to stabilize in a number of matchups where the other aggro decks would just tank if they don't have the early aggressive starts. As always, let me know your thoughts down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for another video. Cheers.